Well, welcome to the program today, Ed. I'm really looking forward to chatting.
Yes, thank you, Simon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today.
As I always ask, why Treasury and what made you choose Treasury as your career?
Well, I'm an accidental treasurer. I started out after college in the investments world, broker-dealer world, where I spent 10 years. And then I had a cousin that worked at Microsoft, and she was giving me a tour and the campus, and we happened to walk by Microsoft's treasury trading room, as it were. And I said, that's the place I want to work. It looked really interesting. And I just started applying for any role that was open. And eventually I got my foot in the door there, and I never left Treasury. I just found it to be a very unique intersection within a company.
So just for the listeners there, Nelson Securities was the first decade you mentioned there.
Correct.
And then you went to Microsoft for 7 years.
Correct.
You then jumped across to the utility side of things with Itron for 6 years. And then most recently, your last 5 years, you've been in the IT world with Tableau software. It's
Correct.
a really great cross-section of industries. How would you say Treasury alters between such vast industries like that?
Well, there's the core treasury function is pretty similar across all of them. You know, whether it's banking strategy, payments, liquidity, forecasting, all of those things tend to be somewhat similar across all of them. But each industry has its own nuances and uniqueness. And I've found a lot of things to learn along the way. And I would say, as an example, when I was at Itron, it was a fantastic learning ground for foreign exchange management. They operate in so many different countries, both restricted countries, emerging markets, developed markets, and their customer base is the utility industry. So, much different than Tableau, which is, on the software sales side. And Tableau has been especially interesting as they've expanded internationally and then also changed their business model from perpetual licensing to subscription. So there's always something unique to learn at each organization, each company, but there's a lot of foundational elements that are very consistent across all of them.
Yeah, I think it like one's debt heavy, one's cash rich. It's just which way you sort of dial it up and dial it down, isn't it?
It is, and there's things to learn about both of them, right? And the challenge, and I think this was called out by a couple of treasurers on your podcast, is things like transactions that don't happen very often, say like a credit facility or an interest rate hedge or debt issuance. Those opportunities to be involved in those type of transactions are pretty rare, and so when they do come up, you need to seize them and learn everything you can about them. It's a lot different than doing kind of day in and day out cash management. But even investment management, I had the very unique opportunity to help lead the efforts at Tableau to build out their investment management program. And it was a fantastic learning experience, and it brought great value to the company. So there's always something to learn.
And I think that's the key thing for listeners. From a career development point of view, there's no right or wrong way. It's almost just take the opportunities that come up as they do, or have something in mind that you want to really focus on. Like you mentioned before, the FX side of things. If you're not in a really global business, then target a really global business to go and get that experience. Or if you really want to get that debt capital markets experience, go and target something that's debt heavy, like a utility that needs a lot of debt capital markets transactions. So yeah, you're right. It's not, there's no right or wrong, and there's nothing that you can say is the standard. You've just got to look at what you want to do from a career development point of view, don't you, Ed?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You always need to be, learning more, self-educating, have a thirst for knowledge and growing your knowledge base and experience, especially when you get those opportunities on the transaction side that tend to be fewer and farther between. And you can target certain companies or certain industries that you want to really focus on, but I think the best treasurers have experience in a number of industries. And that gives them the best perspective, the best view, and be able to, kind of correlate things that they've seen in previous companies and how that might be impacting their current company.
Totally agree with you. In your mind then, Ed, what would you say have been the real highlights from a career perspective to date?
Well, I think I've been very blessed to have had some great mentors along the way that have really empowered me and given me a lot of runway and opportunity to help build out the treasury function or build out certain capabilities. I think back to my time at Microsoft, and one of my marquee projects there was leading their initiative to get connected to Swift. Microsoft was really one of the very first corporates to get on Swift to communicate with its banks. And their treasurer, George Zinn, really empowered me to do that. And I think when I went to Itron and their CFO, Steve Helmbrecht, former CFO, was instrumental in supporting our technology vision and roadmap for Treasury, but also integrating that with their global ERP rollout. And so there's, just huge opportunities on the technology front and re-engineering front. And then I think at Tableau, being able to demonstrate Tableau's products in a tangible way to customers and partners, and how we are very much a data-centric treasury organization, living and breathing data, and how do we visualize that data, and how do we drive more use of that data. And it's being empowered by their CFO, Damon Fletcher, who hired me, and the prior CFO, Tom Walker. Really been fortunate to work with CFOs and treasurers who just really see the value of technology and the value of data, and being able to have opportunities to demonstrate the company's own products. I think some of the other highlights were being recognized globally for some of these initiatives. So at Itron, we won the 2014 Treasury Today Adam Smith Award for Best Process Reengineering Solution. And then we've won 2 Adam Smith Awards while at Tableau, both around technology. And then this year, we won Treasury and Risk Alexander Hamilton Award for Technology Excellence. So I think being recognized publicly by peers and industry professionals about the value that we've been able to bring to the different organizations I've been have worked for has just been really rewarding and really special.
And I think really important, as you say there, having CFOs and CEOs who really value treasury as well, and give you that rope to be able to go out there and do those type of projects, I think is really important.
Well, it is, and I think the treasurers that are most successful in that have immense credibility. They're valued as a trusted business partner. They're sought after for their views and opinions, and they, have that capital, personal political capital, to show the benefits, and then get the backing of the CFO or CEO and board if needed. And so I think that is critical. You have to be absolutely trusted advisor for the organization.
It's interesting, Ed, because I kind of find it's almost ironic that a lot of CFOs who don't value treasury don't really know what they're leaving on the table, because they don't know what they don't know.
That is correct. That's, Treasury lives in the weeds, which is good and bad. But our job is to distill out the weeds and really make the CFO aware of the critical items that matter, what moves the needle for the organization, and that we have our fingers on the pulse of the organization from a cash perspective and a risk management perspective.
Ed, you've been in a couple of really different industries. Like Tableau has been on an amazing growth journey over recent times, but then the utilities sector is very stable and almost annuity type like in what they do, and really debt hungry. How would you sort of contrast your treasury role in those type of very different businesses?
Well, yeah. So I'd say there's been build at both of those organizations, both at Itron, which really is a global leader in smart meter, smart grid technology. Its customers are the utilities around the world. And then Tableau being a software company that really empowers people to see and understand their data and use their tools to work with data visually. And both of them, have a lot of nuance in their industries and a lot of uniqueness. Itron is very much interesting because it's very hardware oriented at the time I was there. And so really understanding, cost structures, what went into the production of meters, looking at that supply chain, and ultimately where the final sale was done and all the currency touch points. And then contrasting that to Tableau, which was on a very, much an aggressive growth trajectory, and going into new markets, new countries, setting up new legal entities, new banking operations, managing intercompany, and then and as a result of that growth, really building out an investment management program. And so, there's been, I've learned across the board, but definitely 2 different unique industries. I would say the utility space tends to be a little bit quieter, and longer cycled versus the software space, which is very much make decisions, move forward, let's rapidly grow, but in a smart way.
Yeah. And did you find it a challenge moving across industries, or is it more just a cultural change?
I would say it's probably more cultural. A company. I really enjoyed my time at Itron, but again, serving the utility industry, which tends to be a little bit more slower moving, very deliberate in thinking, and on the customer base, and that tends to work its way through the organization there. But also, there was significant amount of, I would say, process reengineering. We were rolling out a single global instance of Oracle. We were putting in a lot of treasury technology, Swift connectivity, treasury management system, FX management systems, and trading systems. So being able to stitch all those together, and then that was the opportunity to go to Tableau, which was a greenfield opportunity to build their treasury function from scratch, that was really one of the key items that drew me to Tableau. And then I say the other item would be to demonstrate their software in a tangible way. But going to build out the treasury from the ground up there, and thinking through, what's the right structure from a cash management, liquidity management, what are the right processes for forecasting, what's the right processes for foreign exchange management, even things like going in and establishing legal entities in new countries. A great cross-group project team there with people from tax, from legal, from operations, treasury, accounting. And so there's always something unique to learn, but I took a lot of the learnings that I had from Itron and have been able to apply those in a positive way at Tableau.
It's almost the ultimate, a blank sheet of paper and make it your own. That's probably the one that most people want to tick off before they retire, isn't it?
It is because you can switch companies, you can drive incremental change, you can lead incremental change, but if it's already been built, it's incremental change. And to have that blank sheet of paper and say, this is how a treasury should function, this is what this treasury needs to do to add value for the organization, for Tableau, and this is our roadmap, this is what our roadmap looks like for the next 2 years, 3 years, and then course correct along the way as the business changed, as the business grew, and we went into different countries and with different legal entities and changing kind of licensing models, being able to then course correct as needed, but still building out all those foundational components was just really just a fun experience, great experience.
Ed, what about networking? What's been your approach from a networking perspective over your career, and advice for others out there as to what you think is the best way?
Sure. I'd say one of the things that I've been very fortunate to have experienced from a networking perspective is I would say all three companies, Microsoft, Itron, and Tableau, were supportive of us participating in some of the treasury peer groups out there, specifically in the US. I've been a participant in the NOI group, some of their different functional peer groups, Global Cash and Banking peer group, their FX managers and their Global Cash, and most recently in their Tech 20 high growth peer group. And so being able to go to those meetings and meet other practitioners in companies that may be in similar industries or completely different industries, but to learn from each other, that has been invaluable to me. And I think the benefit of peer groups like that is there tends to be a lot deeper sharing, a lot more open sharing, and a lot more dialogue, both at the peer group meetings and afterwards. I exchange emails fairly regularly with people I've met over the years, where someone reaches out and say, how does this work? Have you had experience on this particular item or that issue? And being able to share those learnings, those best practices, and really just experiences. And I think that's been great from a personal growth perspective. But I also think networking is critical within your company. You need to know people across the organization and who the leaders are, who different people are within the company, and whether it's the business functions like tax or audit or FP&A, but even in the front, customer-facing sales and support. And that's been really fun at Tableau because there's such a high energy, it's such a high energy company, it's such a youthful company. and just being able to meet people from different backgrounds and learn what they do and learn how they interact with our customers has been a lot of fun.
And I think the thing I just pick up there that you mentioned is it's actually giving as well, isn't it? Like networking is not really about what you can get out of it. It's more how you can help others. And that's where the peer group scenario is everyone's trying to help everyone else as opposed to looking at what's in it for them. And it's that open sharing that really makes networking successful, I think.
Yeah, that's correct. And I'd say one thing that I read many years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, was an article that McKinsey had published. And the title of the article was Givers Take All. And that article really resonated with me because it was really talking about the value that teams can provide and individuals provide when they willingly share information. And it kind of bisected an organization and said, are you an information giver or are you an information taker? And those companies that are most successful have very much a culture of information giving, information sharing. And I think that is really critical. And whether it's your own organization or just with others that you meet along the way, and being a trusted, sharer of knowledge, thought leader, whatever that looks like.
Yep, I totally agree with that. What about mentors, Ed? Have mentors been a part of your career so far, and how, if so, how have they helped?
Great question, Simon. It's probably not something I specifically thought of or sought out in a formalized way. Having kind of an official mentor, but what I've approached it as is the people I've worked with or worked for, really, learning from them and establishing, more just informal dialogue that that just helps me understand what their problems are, what their challenges are, and how to think about things. I think back to my time at Microsoft, and really what spawned Microsoft getting on Swift to communicate with its banks was a hallway discussion with the treasurer saying, I really want just a daily view of all of our cash balances and transactions. And that led to something, really unique and getting, connected and driving towards that. But I haven't really put the emphasis on, more formalized mentorship that I probably should have and would have benefited from in hindsight.
It's interesting that you say that though, Ed, because when I first started the podcast, I would have thought that having formal mentorships was something that everyone should have. But the more people that I talk to, I think the informal ones are actually the ones that have far more impact. It's great to have if they're available, have those ones that are formal, but people tend to naturally gravitate to people in those informal situations. And again, going back to that networking, it's a more open giving, I'll help you and you help me type scenario, whereas the formal ones are a little bit more, it's not as natural, and it's what can I get as the mentoree or what can I get as the mentor. So I definitely think that the informal way is actually the way I would recommend most listeners go down and naturally gravitate and make it work that way.
I would agree with that. Yeah, 100%.
If you had your time over, Ed, and you were chatting to the 25-year-old back starting your career, what is it that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Oh, great question. I would say I probably wished back then that I knew the importance of moving far beyond my comfort zone, not in a dangerous, career-threatening way, but being willing to take risks in moving out of Treasury into the business groups and understanding the broader aspect of the company I'm working for. I've just happened to love Treasury, so I never really wanted to leave. That hadn't been something on my mind, but there's huge value in that, even from a 12-month, 24-month rotational perspective. And I think the other thing would have been being open to not only opportunities outside of Treasury, but opportunities outside of the United States, and maybe taking an international assignment. I think, looking back in hindsight, I think people that have gone on an international assignment for 12 or 24 or 36 months really come back with a much deeper and broader perspective of the world and different cultures, and just really have unique insight that that people that stay in their local home environment don't get. And I think in hindsight, I wish I would have pursued kind of those two items.
It's interesting because I say that international assignments teach you emotional intelligence because it's only small things that change, but those small things are really different, really important in cultures.
They are. And I've been very fortunate to have had a lot of global travel experience, and some I'd say longest kind of travel 2-3 weeks at a time, but it's not like living in a culture. It's not like working with people in a different country daily and dealing with just the different things that are out there, whether it's the commute, the food, the news, just the dialogue. And I think there's just huge value in that. Huge value in that.
I'm a global citizen myself, and I totally agree with you, Ed. I think it's invaluable, and you don't realise it until you've done it. So, yeah, I totally think that's a really good piece of advice. When you're hiring, Ed, what is it that you really look for in your direct reports?
I look for people that want to learn constantly, and not only that they want to learn, but they want to make a difference. They want to take ownership, and they come in every day and say, what can I do to make this pasture greener? What rocks in this field can be turned over? What problem can I solve? And how can I just constantly drive value for the organization? And that's what I really look for, people that have a thirst for knowledge, not understanding the what, but the why. Why are we doing something? And challenge, right? Challenge, think about it differently. And what, if the question is, if the answer is, we've always done it this way, that's probably not a good answer, right? And so things need to be continually rethought and reworked. But I really look for people that have that thirst and that want to make a difference in the organization and help drive for something. And so those are the things I look for. And I've been really fortunate to have had some great hires over the years that have, where it hasn't felt like me as the hiring manager with a subordinate, but really me is working with someone and helping them grow their career and seeing them flourish and seeing them excel. And that's super rewarding.
It's interesting because I find all of the good managers out there that I talk to have that same emphasis on watching people grow, seeing them thrive. It's definitely a trait of a good manager. There's no two ways about it. I hear it all the time, and it's amazing. Not that you don't hear it from others, but it comes out consistently from those who rate as really good managers.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's, your career can really take off when you come under the leadership and under the wings of a great manager that really invests in their people, really empowers their people, and who really steps back and lets the team members shine.
What do you think makes a successful treasurer in the eyes of the CFO, the CEO, the board?
I think it's someone who really listens, who's very thoughtful, who sees not only the big picture of what the organization is trying to achieve, but how things are going to impact that, whether it's externalities, economic environment, partners, suppliers on the banking side specifically, but technology and trends. What are the trends that need to be looked at and considered as the business grows and changes? It's not all about 100% rate of return or risk reduction, but it's quantifying those and then figuring out what makes sense for your organization and coming at it with a thoughtful approach. So I think most importantly, it's really understanding what's important to the CFO, the CEO, and the board, and then making sure that your function aligns to that, supports that.
Which is all ever more evident now in this COVID scenario where cash and liquidity are king, right?
They are. I mean, there's not a day that goes by I don't see articles or talk with people that are trying to improve their cash forecasting, their understanding of cash and cash movements, liquidity, stress testing that. And there'll be an ebb and flow to that as this thing runs its course. The focus may shift a little bit, but it goes back to those core foundational items of Treasury, which is your banking, your cash, knowing where your cash is at, having your finger on the pulse of that cash. And right now, I would say many organizations are laser focused on cash and understanding that, and really, where previously they may have had a materiality threshold at some higher number, now that threshold is much lower because they want to see everything as granular as possible.
You just touched on before, as part of success, it's tech advancements. With technology changing so quickly, how do you see the role of the treasurer changing over the coming years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably pigeonhole myself a little bit in the treasury world by being really focused on technology and use of technology, and I see it as a tool, right? It's a constantly evolving tool set, and it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle where the pieces are kind of constantly changing depending on what's happening with the business and the growth of the business and new markets or change in the underlying business and organization, but also what's happening externally. And how do I put in new pieces into that puzzle to fill those holes and make sure that we have the right borders and then the right foundation in place. So I think what I see in the changing here is treasurers need to be much more technology savvy. It's not necessarily an IT problem or an IT project. It's a initiative or it's a need that you need to partner with IT within your organization, external partners, whether it's banks or fintechs or TMS or ERP, and your own internal team members, and everybody needs to figure out what are the pieces that we need to put in place and how can we do that quickly and efficiently and cost effectively. I really see you have to understand technology and you have to understand data. I also see that these some of these system implementations that used to take 18 months, 24 months or longer, no one wants to take on those type of projects anymore. They're just too long, too costly. It takes too much effort and the length of time to actually get payback from those. And so people need to be willing to put in, try things, not in a risky way, but try things and move things forward much more quickly and efficiently on the technology front. And everything's going to cloud, real time, APIs, analytics, the importance of data, and that should not be lost on anybody out there.
I think that's a really good point as well, is the I can never say this word, modularity of systems now allows you to just do a piece at a time, doesn't it? Rather than one massive project that takes a long time, like you say, over 18 months.
I certainly don't want to sign, not unless I have to. I don't really want to sign up for a system implementation that's going to take multiple years to even achieve usage of it. And so yes, modularity, doing things quickly. And I think the technology is changing out there, whether it's on the analytics side, whether it's the use of technologies like robotic process automation and being able to just create, people on your team being able to just create, these automation bots, as it were, or scripts that just bring incremental benefit to your team. That one of the interesting things I noticed in the last year at Tableau is that our accounts payable team reports up through me, and they were one of the teams that really most embraced the use of RPA technology because they saw ways to just drive incremental automation for different processes. Instead of ticking and tying spreadsheets together, they were able to build scripts around that. And so I think it shows the thirst and hunger to use technology by organizations, but in a smart, tangible way.
And I mean, your business or Tableau, obviously one of the ones at the forefront of that. I've had many chats with people around systems and how powerful yours is with making sure that that data is analysed effectively, and RPA and all the rest of it is used effectively.
Yeah, correct. And that's been really a highlight for me, is just I live and breathe within Tableau all day, looking at whether it's cash or investments or payments, data out of our ERP system, and then bringing it all together. And we never know what, I think this, there's always this kind of fallback on the number of reports, or I need a report for this or that. And it's not really a report. It's I need the data and I need to be able to analyze it to answer whatever question is top of mind at this particular time. And then how do I iterate through that to go to the next question and then the next question beyond that?
Ed, it's been a pleasure chatting today. I've really enjoyed our chat. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
Thank you, Simon. Really appreciate it.